So, hello everybody, welcome to this workshop. We will mic a jazz band. Everybody in one room, something you don't see so often today, because very often musicians are separated. Let's go quickly through the mics and through the setup first. And yeah, what we will also do today, we will compare cheap microphones or just microphones that musicians actually can buy with their money. I choose to take Soyuz for that. There are small diaphragm microphones where you can get a pair for about 1,300. They really sound nice. They're a little bit more expensive microphones, around 2,000 from Soyuz. And on the other hand, we have vintage tube microphones like those old Neumann M49, which are beautiful sounding microphones, but a pair of them is probably nowadays, I don't know, maybe around $40,000 easily. And this is quite a difference. So we have microphone for $1,300 against a microphone pair for $40,000. I thought it would be really interesting to also show you the difference. And actually, really, also for me, it's interesting because I never done this comparison. I use normally the expensive one because I'm lucky to have them and I invested in them. But obviously, the cheaper microphones, they also sound good. And let's see how close we can come. So we have those M49s for the drum. On a jazz drum, nothing is as important as to really get absolutely a fantastic sound on the overhead mic and then add the bass drum. So, and still today, even in jazz studios that say they are specialized in it, very often what they try to do is to basically get a cymbal sound. They take small diaphragm microphone over the cymbal, they cut away all basses, and they think the sound of the snare and of the tom-tom is coming from the microphones there. That is totally wrong. Actually, the tom mics, even the snare mics, well, I still have them because they can add a little bit definition, but that's also all that they should add. But the body of a tom-tom, the body is not coming on the tom-tom mic, because to have the full body of a tom, there is a height, there is a width. To have this, you need space. If you're close, there's no way that there is body. That might be very well in a pop recording where you do like artificial sounding drum with a lot of punch, a lot of pressure jam. But in jazz, this tom, the snare, the floor tom, everything must sound great on the overhead mics. And we will place them and then we will make sure that they sound good. But you need a full sounding drum sound, and that's why good drum overhead microphones are so important. And then for the spot, you can really take whatever you want. Dynamic microphone, cheap condenser microphone, it doesn't really matter. And if I do a sound check, I'm only listen usually to the overheads and the bass drum because that must sound good. And if this sounds good, then we can go over to the bass. And the drummer maybe just has to spend about 3 minutes for the sound check. And we don't have to let the drummer play the snare, tack, tack, tack for 5 minutes. That's just absolutely not necessary. Overhead 49 auch leiser.
Reicht das oder noch eins?
Zur Sicherheit noch eins. The thing is always in a soundtrack you have to imagine how everything together will be. So it doesn't make sense to correct things at the drum that might make sense. At the moment it sounds rather natural, but maybe there is a little bit not enough definition on the overheads, because once we get in all the other mics we even lose more definition. I might just go a little bit closer. Bass drum sounds actually very nice that way. It's perfect. And the drum anyway is nice. I might go a little bit closer or not. At the moment it sounds nice, but once all the other mics are open we lose more definition. So maybe I go a little bit closer, yeah, to disturb your head. Because otherwise... Right, right. No, M49 for you, sorry. Then we have here a saxophone. Again, a Soyuz. I think it's a tube mic, so that's not such a cheap microphone, but still something you could easily see in about every recording studio. It's about a 3,000 franc mics. And you have the U47 tube, a legendary microphone, which also is probably nowadays 17,000, probably easily. It's a very good saxophone microphone. What you also see is that there is not a lot of space between the instruments. It's often done wrong nowadays because people think if they record everybody in one room, they should add space between the instruments to avoid crosstalk, which is wrong because in a room, once you have some distance, and if you go even further away, the signal gets not softer. So if we have here the drum and here the saxophone, if we get further away with the drum, we don't have less drum in the saxophone microphone. It just sounds different, and obviously it sounds worse, and it comes too late. So if you would go with the drum back there, then the drum hits the sax microphone anyway. We anyway have this crosstalk, and if the drum is placed far away, we have too much delay. That doesn't sound good. Then because of the delay, the drum will sound very roomy once we open the saxophone microphone, because this is what we would add. The saxophone mic would be like a room mic for the drum that would be too far away. But if it's close, actually what do we have on the saxophone microphone? We still have a rather good drum sound because the drum is close, and this perspective of the drum actually is very good sounding. So that's my hope, that once we open the sax microphone, we also will hear the drum, but in a nice way on the saxophone. Now I feel the Soyuz is a little bit more boxy sounding, because sometimes depending on where the saxophone player plays, and here you have a lot of air in the 47 that might be very good then together again in the band context. And if you compare microphones, it's one thing how they sound in solo, but it's totally different thing how they mix in the... We have two double bass microphones, again obviously a Soyuz, because that's what we want to compare everything. And we have beautiful Mayberg M1, that's probably the best tube microphone that you could buy today. It's really huge sounding microphone, I love it. Less low end, but still it would be perfectly valid in a mix, so it would not be really a problem to, if we only had the Soyuz. Actually, maybe you even would take that, and because it's kind of even more controlled, the Soyuz. It's really amazing how good they sound. Let's listen again, the expensive one. But you do have more punch here, more physical integrity. Almost a little bit too much low end, which is something, a bass, if you're close, you always have too much low end. That's just, if you're close, like with a bass drum, there's always too much low end, but we have to go so close to record it. And so actually a very good microphone that really goes deep can then almost have too much low end, but that's easy to fix. But what we would have, if we would mix it then with the expensive microphone, he plays and you really have the body of the bass. That's usually what you only get with the real expensive microphone. Also for the bass, it should be close to the drum, because otherwise how could they play nicely together if there is distance? Then you would need to give them headphones. But the reason why we try to have every musician in one room is that if they don't need a headphone, actually then the musical dynamic and moreover the microdynamics of the very little details that musicians are playing are played in a perfect way. So actually you can think a bit like we have air in this room, and what the musicians are doing is shaking the air molecules, and if they play without headphones, like in an ensemble context, they do it all together in a perfect way. And that's what we record. Although we still have a lot of microphones, in jazz, it's not like in classical. You could not just use two microphones. You could try, but then usually there is not enough definition. You still use many microphones. But if they play together without headphones close, what they produce in the air is actually perfect. The dynamic is perfect. And you open all the microphones, and very fast, it's kind of nice to listen to that. While if you separate with walls or in different room, you give the musician headphones, what will happen is it's not a natural scene anymore. For sure, the drummer will mix the bass on his headphone mixer louder than he would normally hear the bass, which is quite logic because the drummer likes to have the bass clear and loud. But as soon as he has the bass clear and loud here, as it's not natural, he will play the bass drum louder, because the bass is louder, so he thinks he can play the bass drum differently. And even if we have the best musicians in the world, you might think they should know this. And they do know it. But still, if you hear it on the headphone, you will play different, because a really good musician plays as good to what he hears at the moment as possible. And if you give him the signal on headphones, that's what he plays to. But that's not nice for the air here in this room. That's not nice for the musical mix, because what we then have is too much drum in the saxophone mic, and moreover too much drum in the bass mic. And if there is too much crosstalk, your recording is worth nothing at the end. So that's why I actually really like to record everybody in one room, close, but then it must be without headphones. And now let's go to the piano. Again, Soyuz mic. Those are the their FET version, 017 FET. It's really a mic that is affordable. I think 2 mics is about 4,000, something like this. So every studio, even musician, could buy this. We also have the Browner, which is also not super high-end, but the Browner VM1 is really a great piano mic. I think I used those mics probably since 20, 30 years, since my beginning. We will compare that. I usually mic the piano from that perspective, as I feel it sounds most natural. But it also will then depend. Once the piano player is coming, I try to work with my intuition. I think this is very important. And all these places of all microphones could still change once they are here. So that's also important. Like as if you're a musician and you play your solo, actually you don't know what you will play. It depends. How did the song start? What is the feeling now? What is the situation? And then you start to go. And that should also be with microphones and placing microphones. Musicians very often think that we have clear places where the mics are, and sometimes the musician, they will write down how I mic'd them, and then they might go to another studio and say, hey, I was here with Dettwiler and that sounded great, let's do it the same. That would be the really worst thing that a musician could do, because it's not going to sound great again with the same microphone position, with different music, with different rooms. Here we could have more distance than if you would record like in hard studio, which a lot of jazz gets recorded, where the rooms are smaller and where you have separation. There maybe it would be better if you go inside, or if you mic more the hammers. So it's always different, and it always depends on the situation. And the mic position here also depends on how loud the drummer will be playing, because crosstalk is also an issue. And then we have RE20. That's a kind of a special thing. I always mic the hammers with RE20, and this is really just because everybody is in one room. If everybody plays together in one room, we do lose definition always. If you listen to old beautiful records, Kind of Blue, Take 5, then it's great sounding, the room is great, physical integrity is great, but the definition is always not so great. It doesn't disturb me, but nowadays musician also wants definition. The definition is not so great because every piano tune is in all the mics. Every drum hit is in all the mics, and so on. Now, if you add some special mics, you could get a little bit the definition back. That's why we have spot mics at the tom, and that's why those hammer mic, if mixed in a little bit, it can give the piano player back a little bit the definition that otherwise is lost. So now at the piano, actually, if I do mic comparisons, I usually first will put the other ones a little bit away so that I really can place those mics nicely. And then I usually just try to listen once he's playing to get an impression of his touch, of what he thinks about the piano sound. He doesn't have to explain me. I'll hear what he is after immediately. And then you try to get a sound that is appropriate for him, but also, and that is so important, also for this scenario here, that it will sound good with the drum, where we know there will be a lot of drum here anyway. So that always might be the compromise. Gut, und du kannst gerne einfach ein bisschen interpretieren mit Liebenswürdigkeit. Das. Fabio, bist du noch da irgendwo? Kannst du mal das hier noch gleich hin tun? Und das dann auch. So gut ist das nicht mehr raus. Here I think with browners, which really are good fitting a piano. That sounds way more open, while with the Soyuz that would not be the perfect match. Well, let's show you again the Soyuz. Although, I mean, they're nice and mellow, might also work. It's kind of a more warm sound. The touch of the piano player is coming quite in a nice way on the browners.
That's the browner?
Yeah, that's the browners. I make a quick adjustment.
Ja, normal ist es vorne jetzt das linke Pedal, wenn wir es brauchen.
Kann man den auch schon.
Das ist doch super.
Okay, oder?
How is it?
Falsche Richtung überlegt.
Oh mein Gott.
Was sagst du?
Die 20 sind wieder am Leben.
Gut. And then it's always many things. I think the Soyuz are really nice and warm, but still I think the touch on the browners and the room is probably better. And then it's always, if you have spectral balance things or whatever, you always also have to listen to the integrity, also to the depth of field. I think for now that's probably good enough, because the next thing would be to hear what happens if Jorge is playing, because maybe we anyway have to go closer, so it doesn't make sense to make a half an hour piano sound check and then the band is playing and then you see it doesn't matter. It doesn't work. And I think now they can play all together and then we have to look whether it's too roomy or not. That will be the next task. Sounds great. I think you could play all together now and we look if all together will sound good. the difference. If you would mute the piano now and the bass, isolate, then actually the drum would sound with more definition and better. And actually, if the room was bigger and better sounding, it would work with such a microphone position. But now I think in that room we will try to make the snare a little bit more dry by maybe isolating the piano mics a little bit more, or maybe by installing a wall between bass and bass drum and snare. That might also help. Good. So actually what we heard, actually that will sound great and natural. At the moment, as we know this room already, the only thing I want to work is that we have a little bit, a lot of drums obviously in the room on all the microphone, and that is mostly to be heard with the snare. And what is actually the solution is to reduce a little bit reflections. So I will have one more wall here, because here the snare goes to this wall, it comes back, it goes into the this microphone if you reduce it here. Because obviously we could have a wall here, but then the entire concept of playing together is gone, because they would not hear each other anymore. But also we went a little bit closer with those walls just to lose a little bit the snare energy in that room. That's actually not a problem of drum or snare, it's a little bit our room. It's also for this kind of recording too small. If you look the room where Kind of Blue Take 5 was recorded, the Columbia studio, it was double as high and double as large. And what happens, he plays the snare and it is way later that it comes back to the mic. And also the highs, the upper mids, 5K is dampened more in the studios. That's very difficult to get now, because a sound engineer, I would do this here, but it's near impossible because the acoustic thinks, no, it's flat, it's linear. But I don't understand that linearity is not always what we want. What we want, on that recording, is a very warm sound. Maybe you could just have a jacket here. I think that's also something I'll try, because a jacket here, for this to kill this reflection, won't hurt anybody. Let's compare the sax again to the Soyuz. Oh. That's totally funny, because we thought it was so good, but now in the mix it's just quacking. It's not a good sound anymore with the Soyuz. While with the 47, it delivers what we need together with the drum and the piano, like this clarity in the upper mids, but not this boxy mids. And this is usually something, always found with this old, expensive tube mics. The difference, we already did such comparisons already before, and in solo it always sounds like you could just as good take the cheap one. But then the more mics you open, the huger the difference gets. And with those magic tube mics, and I mean, it's a lucky punch in history that they sound so good, because I mean, when they built the mic, they thought, oh, it's too much noise, too much distortion, shitty mics, and but yeah, we just know they are good. And in the end, you also accept a little bit more room on the snare. That's like Kind of Blue, just that this recording room sounded so much nicer. But if we wouldn't want to have the room, we would not have to record that way. And what is the benefit in recording this way is that although it's absolutely not mixed yet, you already have kind of a natural depth of field. The saxophone is in front, bass, drum, bass, piano, and the drum is far behind. And that's actually what we always want on these old school recordings. Gib ihm 5 dB mehr drum, komm, fuck it, dort. See, actually the drum overheads, I didn't take them more down, and if you hear now, you hear the tick quite with a lot of precision. There's no need to go more down, in contrary. So actually it's good that we didn't change.
How is it now with the level of the snare and the level of the cymbals? Because now the cymbals are louder than the quiet snare hits.
Yeah, then you would just basically bring the snare mic up a little bit. Yes, actually, either the overhead are perfectly balanced, or if the cymbals are a little bit louder, it's okay too. Sometimes you have it that the snare are a little bit louder on the overhead than the cymbal. Then you should actually change something, because yeah. And also if you would make the snare a little bit louder, it's also coming more in front, which might not be bad. Then I would equalize it a little bit because it's cold sounding, and I will compress it a little bit. And then you also have to abstract. If you place it like this, you cannot really see if the compressor is right or not, obviously, because obviously if that small snare hits, you won't hit the compressor, but based on the experience, you set it up, and then once he hits loud, you look that it's just compressing maybe 3 dBs, which it does, and then you know, and then all is good. So without the snare mic, bad. Smile. Ah. Yeah, that would be about the setup. So I think now if there is any question to the setup, you have to speak loud that you are heard on the microphone.
All right. With the piano miking, how do you deal with the time differences between the Airy 20 and the main mic?
Well, you open both and then you listen, and sometimes you have to maybe make a little delay. But very often, if the Airy 20s are only mixed in a little bit, it sounds good the way it is, but it's actually up to listen, because piano thing is anyway so phasey. It's in all the directions sound, and usually it's not a problem. I mean, to deal with different phases is also what we as sound engineers have to deal with. It's like in an orchestra, it's never everything in phase. Drum, it's not everything in phase, and you just hear if the phase differences sound good. Finally, it's like an equalizer. If the piano is boxy sounding, which many pianos have a little bit too much at 500, you can actually, if you have 4 mics, use the timing differences so that this boxiness is already reduced a little bit. So you just listen that whatever happens if you mix it in is actually good.